Constructivism is not one theory, but a coming together of many instructional approaches. Howdy, I'm Callie McCullough, and today I will be presenting over Constructivism in Education for my Module 4 project for ALEC 601. As a teacher, do you have difficulty in engaging your students in learning? Do your students have a hard time in building communication and collaboration skills? Or is critical thinking and problem solving arduous for your students? In the race to prepare for high-stakes state assessments, students are losing out on instructional practices that foster meaningful learning. Constructivism, however, powerfully shapes the classroom to where the focus shifts from the teacher to the student. In the constructivist classroom, both the teacher and students think of knowledge as the ability to adapt to the ever-changing world we live in and to explore the views of others, as well as successfully think for themselves and discuss their own personal views, not just reiterate facts from memorization. According to the constructivism theory, students are not empty vessels that need to be filled. Rather, students' existing knowledge serves as an important foundation for new learning. This approach to teaching and learning requires that teachers take the time to get to know students in depth and to integrate what they know and what they want their students to learn into their instruction. In other words, a constructivist classroom is a student-centered classroom. A constructivist approach to teaching benefits everyone, but it is particularly valuable when it comes to facilitating the learning of students from diverse backgrounds. So I hope you can get a chuckle out of this humorous cartoon about constructivism. The psychological roots of constructivism began with the developmental work of Jean Piaget, who developed a theory that analyzed the development of the mind to evolutionary biological development and highlighted the adaptive function of cognition. Piaget proposed 4 stages in human development: the sensor-motor stage, the pre-operational stage, the concrete operational stage, and the formal operational stage. For Piaget, the development of human intellect proceeds through adaptation and organization. Adaptation is a process of assimilation and accommodation where external events are assimilated into existing understanding, but unfamiliar events which don't fit with existing knowledge are accommodated into the mind, thereby changing its organization. His hypothesis that learning is a transformative rather than a cumulative process is centralized. Children do not learn a bit at a time about some issue until it finally comes together as understanding. Instead, they make sense of whatever they know from the very beginning. This understanding is progressively reformed as new knowledge is acquired, especially new knowledge that is incompatible with their previous understanding. The Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky relevance to constructivism derives from his theories about language, thought, and their mediation by society. He held the position that the child gradually internalizes external and social activities, including communication with more competent others. Although social speech is internalized in adulthood, which becomes thinking, he contended that it still preserves its intrinsic collaborative character. In his experiments, he studied the difference between child reasoning when working independently versus reasoning when working with a more competent person. His findings suggested that learning environments should involve guided interactions that permit children to reflect on inconsistencies and to change their conceptions through communication. Then we have the American philosopher and educator John Dewey. He said that education depended on action. Knowledge and ideas emerge only from a situation in which learners have to draw out experiences that have meaning and importance to them. Dewey argued that human thought is practical problem solving, which proceeds by testing rival hypotheses. These problem solving experiences occur in social contexts such as a classroom, where students join together in manipulating materials and observing outcomes. These 3 men are what shaped constructivism. In summary, Piaget contributed the idea of transformation in learning and development. Vygotsky contributed the idea that learning and development were internally tied to commutative interactions with others, and Dewey contributed the idea that schools had to bring real-world problems into the school curriculum. Okay, so now that we've kind of got a background of how constructivism came about, let's go over our objectives for today. They are to define constructivism, distinguish roles of the teacher and the student in a constructivist classroom, explain strategies for implementing constructivism in the classroom, and describe the benefits of constructivism. So, what is constructivism? Constructivism states that learning is an active, contextualized process of constructing knowledge rather than acquiring it. So, basically, it's a theory based on observation and scientific study about how people learn. It says that people construct their own understanding and knowledge of the world through experiencing things and reflecting on those experiences. When we encounter something new, we have to reconcile it with our previous ideas and experience, maybe changing what we believe or maybe discarding the new information as irrelevant. In any case, we are active creators of our own knowledge. To do this, we must ask questions, explore, and assess what we know. In the classroom, the constructivist view of learning can point towards a number of different teaching practices. In the most general sense, it usually means encouraging students to use active techniques, which is like experiments or real-world problem solving, to create more knowledge and then to reflect on and talk about what they are doing and how their understanding is changing. The teacher makes sure he or she understands the student's pre-existing conceptions and guides the activity to address them and then build on them. Constructivist teachers encourage students to constantly assess how the activity is helping them gain understanding by questioning themselves and their strategies. Students in the constructivist classroom ideally become expert learners. This gives them ever-broadening tools to keep learning. With a well-planned classroom environment, the students learn how to learn. There are a number of competing constructivist views in education. Constructivists tend to celebrate complexity and multiple perspectives, though they do share at least a few educational prescriptions. Next, we're going to talk about the constructivist process, which I find to be the most centralized, which is prior knowledge, real and authentic problems, and constructivist curriculum. We'll start with prior knowledge. Constructivists believe that prior knowledge impacts the learning process in trying to solve problems. Perceptual or conceptual similarities between existing knowledge and a new problem can remind people of what they already know. This is often one's first approach towards solving problems. Information not connected with the learner's prior experiences will quickly be forgotten. In short, the learner must actively construct new information into his or her existing mental framework for meaningful learning to occur. Real and authentic problems. Constructivist learning is based on the active participation of learners in problem solving and critical thinking when given real and authentic problems. Constructivist curriculum. A constructively oriented curriculum presents an emerging agenda based on what children know, what they are puzzled by, and the teacher's learning goals. Thus, an important part of constructivist-oriented curriculum should be the negotiation of meaning. In constructivist classrooms, curriculum is generally a process of digging deeper and deeper into big ideas, rather than presenting a breadth of coverage. As students pursue questions, they derive new and more complex questions to be investigated, building useful knowledge structures which requires effortful and purposeful activity over an extended period of time. Now we're going to discuss the role of the teacher. The teacher's role in a constructivist classroom isn't so much to lecture at students, but to act as an expert learner who can guide students into adopting cognitive strategies such as self-testing, articulating understanding, asking probing questions, and reflection. Their role is to also can organize information around big ideas that engage the student's interest, to assist students in developing new insights, and to connect them with their previous learning. The activities are student-centered, and students are encouraged to ask their own questions, carry out their own experiments, and make their own analogies, and come to their own conclusions. Becoming a constructive teacher may prove to be a difficult transformation, however, since most instructors have been prepared for teaching in the traditional objectivist manner. Here you can see a list of roles the teacher must be a part of in the constructivist classroom. The role of the student in a constructivist classroom. The expectation within a constructivist learning environment is that the student plays a more active role in and accepts more responsibility for their own learning. Here you see a list of what students need to do in a constructivist classroom. So here we're going to talk about how constructivism differs from traditional ideas about teaching and learning. In the constructivist model, the students are urged to be actively involved in their own process of learning. The teacher functions as more as a facilitator who coaches, mediates, prompts, and helps students develop and assess their understanding and thereby their questioning. One of the teacher's biggest jobs becomes asking good questions. The chart here compares the traditional classroom to the constructivist one. You can see significant differences in basic assumptions about knowledge, students, and learning. It's important, however, to bear in mind that constructivists acknowledge that students are constructing knowledge in traditional classrooms too. It's just really a matter of the emphasis being on the student and not on the instructor. The search for understanding motivates students to learn. When students want to know more about an idea, a topic, or an entire discipline, they put more cognitive energy into classroom investigations, discussions, and study more on their own. Here we have identified 5 key principles of constructivism. 1. Pose problems of emerging relevance to students. In many cases, the problem you pose is or will be relevant to the students, and they will approach it sensing its relevance to their lives. But relevance need not be pre-existing for all students. 2. Structure learning around primary concepts. Encourage students to make meaning by breaking wholes into parts. You will also, as a teacher, need to avoid starting with the parts to build a whole. As a teacher, you can define or find essential concepts in different ways. You might refer to a list of standards or TEKS we have here in Texas. Or you can organize your constructivist work by exploring significant historical events from multiple perspectives. The challenging of ideas and the seeking of elaborations threatens many students. Students in the traditional classroom who cannot guess what the teacher has in mind for the right answer quickly drop out of class discussion. In the constructivist classroom, they need to be gently led into the constructivist learning environment through open-ended, non-judgmental questioning. 3. Seek and value a student's point of view. Students also need to have an opportunity to elaborate and explain their own point of view. Sometimes you might feel how you feel about something or what you think is not as important is as why. Using evidence or proof to present their opinion is most important. The construction of knowledge calls for not only time to reflect, but also for time and practice in explaining. The opportunities to explain what they're doing help them understand what they are learning. 4. Adapt instruction to address student subpositions. Presenting developmental appropriate work is a place to start when adapting instruction. Most high school students would find the preparation of a film script or a legal brief way more engaging and relevant to their lives than a report format that they mastered in maybe the 6th grade. Role plays are also very interesting ways for students to present their information. As students engage in work, the teacher must monitor their perceptions and ways of learning. The students work in groups to achieve and archive their material and give presentations. 5. In a constructivist classroom, teachers should shift from measuring how well or how poorly a student performs to assessing how much and what kind of help a student needs to be successful. One way to do this would be removing bell curve assessment which will free the student from the need to outachieve others and allows them to collaborate with each other. Authentic assessment occurs most naturally and lasting when it is in a meaningful context and when it relates to authentic concerns and problems faced by students. The best way for you to really understand what constructivism is and what it means in your classroom is by seeing examples of it at work, speaking with others about it, and trying it for yourself. As is the case with many of the current popular paradigms, you're probably already using the constructivist approach to some degree. Constructivist teachers pose questions and problems and guide students to help them find their own answers. They use many techniques in the teaching process. For example, they may promote students to formulate their own questions, which is inquiry-based, allow multiple interpretations and expressions of learning, encourage group work, and use peers as resources, which would be collaborative learning. We're going to do a few examples here. Our first one is inquiry-based. The main activity in a constructivist classroom is solving problems. Students use inquiry methods to ask questions, investigate a topic, and use a variety of resources to find solutions and answers. As students explore the topic, they draw conclusions, and as exploration continues, they revisit those conclusions. Exploration of questions leads to more questions. As an example, students that are sixth graders that are figuring out how to purify water investigate solutions ranging from coffee filter paper to a stovetop distillation apparatus to piles of charcoal to an abstract mathematical solution based on the size of a water molecule. Depending upon students' responses, the teacher encourages abstract as well as concrete, poetic as well as practical creations of new knowledge. Next, we have a constructed example. Students are not blank slates upon which knowledge is etched. They come to learning situations with already formulated knowledge, ideas, and understandings. This previous knowledge is the raw material for the new knowledge they will create. For example, an elementary school teacher presents a class problem to measure the length of the Mayflower. Rather than starting the problem by introducing the ruler, the teacher allows students to reflect and to construct their own methods of measurement. One student offers the knowledge that a doctor said he is 4 feet tall. Another says that she knows horses are measured in hands. These students discuss these and other methods they have heard about and decide on one to apply to the problem. Next, we'll talk about an example of active. The student is the person who creates new understanding for him or herself. The teacher coaches, moderates, suggests, but allows the students room to experiment, ask questions, try things that don't work. Learning activities require students' full participation, like hands-on experiments. An important part of the learning process is that students reflect on and talk about their activities. Students also help set their own goals and means of assessment. Here's an example of a middle school. A middle school language arts teacher sets aside time each week for a writing lab. The emphasis is on content and getting ideas down rather than memorizing grammatical rules. Through one of the teacher's concerns is the ability of his students to express themselves well through written language. The teacher provides opportunities for students to examine the finished and earlier drafts of various authors. He allows students to select and create projects within general requirement of building a portfolio. Students serve as peer editors who value originality and uniqueness rather than the best way to fulfill an assignment. Our fourth and last example is collaborative. The constructivist classroom relies heavily on collaboration among students. There are many reasons why collaboration contributes to learning. The main reason it is used so much in constructivism is that students learn about learning not only from themselves, but also from their peers. When students review and reflect on their learning processes together, they can pick up strategies and methods from one another. In the course of studying ancient civilizations, for example, students undertake an archaeological dig. This may be something constructed in a large sandbox or, as in Dalton's school, archaeotype software simulation on a computer. As the students find different objects, the teacher introduces classifying techniques. The students are encouraged to 1. Set up a group museum by developing criteria and choosing which objects should belong, and 2. Collaborate with other students who worked in different quadrants of the dig. Each group is then asked to develop theories about civilizations that inhabited that area. Next, we're going to talk about assessing student progress. Constructivists believe that assessment should be used as a tool to enhance both the student's learning and the teacher's understanding of student progress. It should not be used as an accountability tool that serves to stress or demoralize students. Types of assessment aligned to this position include reflective journals or portfolios, case studies, group-based projects, presentation, which would be verbal or posters, debates, and role playing. Brooks and Brooks of 1993 state that rather than saying no when a student does not give the exact answer being sought, the constructivist teacher attempts to understand the student's current thinking about the topic. Through non-judgmental questioning, the teacher leads the student to construct new understanding and acquire the new skills correctly. Now we're going to discuss benefits of constructivism. Benefit number 1. Children learn more and enjoy learning more when they are actively involved rather than passive listeners. Benefit 2. Education works best when it concentrates on thinking and understanding rather than on rote memorization. Constructivism concentrates on learning how to think and understand. Benefit number 3. Constructivist learning is transferable. If in constructivist classrooms, students create organizing principles that they can take with them to other learning settings. Benefit number 4. Constructivism gives students ownership of what they learn, since learning is based on students' questions and explorations, and often the students have a hand in designing the assessments as well. Constructivist assessment engages the students' initiatives and personal investments in their journals, research reports, physical models, and the artistic representations. Engaging the creative instincts develops students' abilities to express knowledge through a variety of ways. The students are also more likely to retain and transfer the new knowledge to real life. Benefit number 5. By grounding learning activities in an authentic real-world context, constructivism simulates and engages students. Students in constructivist classrooms learn to question things and to apply their natural curiosity to the world. Benefit number 6. Constructivism promotes social and communication skills by creating a classroom environment that emphasizes collaboration and exchange of ideas. Students must learn how to articulate their ideas clearly as well as to collaborate on tasks effectively by sharing in group projects. Students must therefore exchange ideas and so must learn to negotiate with others and to evaluate their contributions in a socially acceptable manner. This essentially will lead to success in the real world, since they will always be exposed to a variety of experiences in which they will have to cooperate and navigate among the ideas of others. Constructivism connects with our readings on several principles. In How Learning Works, Chapter 4, the principle states, to develop mastery, students must acquire component skills, practice integrating them, and know when to apply and what they have learned. To me, this means that in order to develop expertise in any discipline, a learner must develop a specific knowledge base in that field. This is where prior knowledge in constructivism is key to learning. Some strategies would be to talk to your peers, enlist help of someone that has a different view or knows more than you, in which we talk about that in Chapter 4. Chapter 5, the principle states goal-directed practice coupled with targeted feedback enhances the quality of students' learning. To me, constructivism fits with this principle as well because learning and performance are best fostered when students are engaged in practices that 1. Focus on a specific goal, and 2. Sets clear and high expectations. Also, practice must be paired with feedback where assessment focuses on improvement and not judgment, and assessment focuses on performance, not the performer. And finally, Chapter 7, The principle to become self-directed learners, students must learn to monitor and adjust their approaches to learning. Here is where constructivism, to me, fits the best with our readings. Although everyone requires help with learning at times, the overall goal is to allow students the ability to become capable, self-sufficient, lifelong learners. Also, students should reflect on how they approach their learning, where they can adjust after reflection, especially when paired with reflecting with peers. This reflection, coupled with whatever assessment strategies were used, can only improve for future performance. In summary, instead of having students relying on someone else's information and accepting it as truth, the constructivism learning theory supports that students should be exposed to data, primary sources, and the ability to interact with others so that they can learn from the incorporation of their experiences. The classroom experience should be an invitation for a myriad of different backgrounds in the learning experience, which allows the different backgrounds to come together and observe and analyze information and ideas. The constructivism learning theory will allow students to develop the skills and confidence to analyze the world around them, create solutions or support for developing issues, and then justify their words and actions, while encouraging those around them to do the same and respecting the differences in opinions for the contributions that they can make to the whole of the situation. Classroom applications of constructivism support the philosophy of learning, which build a student and teacher's understanding. Here you can find some additional resources that I found very instrumental in this project. And here are my references for this project. Thank you very much for your attention to this project, and have a great day.